welcome back to the Soccer Queens podcast, where we talk everything female athlete performance training. This is one of the first episodes that I am doing on recovery, where we are going to do a deep dive on the best recovery methods for muscle soreness or dealing with some growth spurt pains, knee pain, and all those things that a lot of youth female athletes experience today. So today I'm joined with one of my favorite physical therapists, Tom Broback. Tom, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thank you for having me on, Erica. I've been a fan of you for a while, whether it's your social media, your blogs, or obviously your podcast as well. And I'm excited to chat about all these things that are relevant to athletes of all sports, whether it's having some pain or having questions about sleep and recovery. It's something that I talk about with people every day, and excited to share with you and your audience, and looking forward to this chat together.
Awesome. And I'm sure a lot of my audience already knows who you are because I'm retweeting so much of your stuff. But for the people who don't know who you are yet, can you just tell everyone what you're up to today and who do you work with?
Yes, absolutely. So, for those of you that don't know me, I am a physical therapist and strength and conditioning coach. I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So, I'm out here in the Midwest. And I kind of have two roles right now. My primary role right now is in clinic. I work full time as a physical therapist, outpatient orthopedics, and I see, a handful of athletes every day. And I also see a good portion of the general population. And I see a little bit of everything, a lot of shoulders and knees, but I also see some hips, ankles, low back, neck. You kind of see a little bit of everything, and both surgical and non-surgical. So athlete comes in, their knees been bothering them for a couple of weeks. I see that a lot. Or if, unfortunately, someone has to have a rotator cuff surgery, take care of them for the couple months or all the way up to a year after surgery as well. And then I also work with clients remotely, more on the strength and conditioning side. Very active through social media, and yeah, I've been working with those clients, and that's been awesome to do something a little bit different and to spread my reach outside of Minnesota and help people out. So those are the two things I do, and my main population, like I said, in clinic is kind of general population, but I love working with any type of athlete, whether they're middle school, high school, college, or kind of that weekend warrior, active adult. Maybe you're not on a team, but you love playing pickup, or you love playing with your friends, or you're in a league or something like that. So anyone with active goals, or they just love to play sports, and whatever level they want to be at, I can help them get to the next level, whether it's in therapy or on the strength and conditioning side.
That's why I love your work so much, because you combine both the rehab and performance side, and you understand the demands of the game, whether it's soccer or basketball or the other athletes that you work with. And you just do such a good job of blending these two and making sure that they're not only pain free, but they're also game ready. And what drew me to you to get you on this episode was your tweet on recovery methods a couple weeks ago. And do you remember exactly what it was? It was something about just the various recovery tools that people use. And there's some misconceptions surrounding recovery. So do you just want to dive into what you had tweeted?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when a lot of people think of recovery, they think of maybe like 100 different things. Some people think of sleep. People think of yoga. Some people think of a Theragun or Normatec boots. I think the when you say recovery, a lot of different things come to mind. And sometimes as coaches or as therapists, we're not specific enough in what we're actually talking about. Um, and usually I talk about kind of like risk reward. So if you're taking a lot of money and time and effort into a certain recovery modality, are you getting a big reward from that? So let's say, for example, like you really like to use a foam roller, which is great for a lot of people when they warm up, or if they after a hard workout, things like that. But if you're spending like an hour foam rolling and you're not really seeing any athletic improvement from it, we have to evaluate that opportunity cost. What else could you do with that hour? Now, a foam roller is nice because they're pretty cheap and you're not going to get hurt using one. So the risk factor is really low. The problem is people spend too much time doing it and not enough time strength training, working on other parts of mobility, working on their sleep, working on, all these bigger factors are getting pushed to the side to do something that has a little bit of reward, but not as much as kind of like the big rocks in our lives. And you can apply that to any kind of type of recovery, whether we're talking about, sleep is obviously like the gold standard for recovery. Like sleep's always going to be beneficial. So there's a high reward for that. But we're talking about like a sauna. Let's say you want to use a sauna every day, but the only sauna you have access to is an hour away and it costs you $200 a month to access it. Well, there's a risk reward there. There's still a high reward, but the risk factor goes up because it's taking more of your time, more of your money, and maybe add a little stress to your life of actually incorporating it. So I think for every situation, you have to do a risk reward analysis of the modality at hand, whether it's an ice pack, whether it's using the sauna, whether it's getting a nap in during the day. And then either by yourself or with the help of a coach, you can figure out, is this a good opportunity for me to improve my performance and my overall health?
I have so many questions. So, as far as foam rolling, I like to use it. A lot of my athletes feel
Yeah.
better when they foam roll, but like you said, if you're doing it for an hour, it's probably too much. So, just a few minutes and you'll feel a
Mhm.
little bit better. But what exactly is the foam rolling doing to the muscle for people who don't really understand that?
Yeah, so for a while, back when I was young and knew everything, I didn't like foam rolling. I thought it was a waste of time, thought it was unnecessary, didn't think it helped at all, and there was a million other things you could have done. And then our good friend Mike Boyle, and then also Eric Cressy, they use a lot of foam rolling with their athletes, and I'm like, okay, they've been around the block a couple more times than I have. Like, let's like sit and listen and think about this, and not just rush to judgment. And Mike called it at one point like cheap massage. And like everyone likes a good most people like a good massage. And the foam rolling is kind of like a cheaper version of massage that you can do by yourself. You don't need to go to somebody. Um, and the way I explain it to patients and athletes is it's decreasing the tension in your muscles from your nervous system that might be a little bit ramped up from the stress of the day. Maybe you had a test earlier, maybe you have a big game tomorrow. It's allowing the muscles to kind of decrease that neural tension that they might be having, and it allows you to get a little bit more range of motion, maybe get the body like moving a little bit better and get you primed for your workout. So that's how I explain it to people. It's not breaking up adhesions, it's not lengthening the muscle, it's not making these physical changes that some people might envision or might have previously thought. Um, but it is, if you do it for a couple minutes, almost everyone I do it with, like, oh my gosh, that feels like so much better. It's like, yeah, of course it does. So this is something, if we use it appropriately, can be a big benefit for us.
And do you recommend athletes do it after every workout, after every game, or just when they're sore?
Yes. So I usually talk to the athlete, like, what's your wind down routine? Like after a big game or like after practice, like what do you do? And some of them like, oh, like I have to go like straight to work or like I have homework or they might not have time after the workout. So it's like, okay, let's get this in at the beginning so we make sure we're tackling it. Um, but for a lot of people, it's like, okay, like after a big game, like I'm sore, but like I'm ramped up, I can't sleep. It's like, okay, little foam rolling, little bit of kind of nasal breathing, like you've talked about. Can we do a couple of those things to kind of help calm the nervous system a little bit and allow you to either sleep or like move on with your day, things like that. Um, what I previously thought was on like off days, we could do a lot of this like active recovery stuff. But recently I've kind of switched my brain a little bit. It's like if you are foam rolling, you're doing something that is adding like a little bit of stress to the body. Like you're actually doing stuff. Or if you're going on a walk or a bike ride, things like that, So if you're having like a true off day, we got to make sure we're not doing too much activity. So then it turns into like a medium day pretty quickly. So I try to get that formulating stuff either right at the beginning of the workout or right after it or right after a game. So then they can truly rest and recover the following night or following day. And I've seen a lot of success with that.
So I get the question a lot the day after a game, an athlete's sore and they will foam roll, but then they're like, "Coach, should I ice?" What are your thoughts on icing the muscles?
Yes. So we previously thought ice was really helpful for the recovery process, especially after like an injury or a surgery.
Mm.
There's been recent research that ice can actually delay recovery and be kind of unhelpful in our goal to get back to 100%. Um, Now we know ice is really good for managing pain and also not having to take like heavy pain meds after a surgery. So in those situations, again, we go back to our risk reward. If you're in a lot of pain, you can't sleep, you have a big day the next day, and you previously respond well to ice, it's like, okay, this one time like probably isn't going to move the needle that much. But if you're someone who, let's say, like you're a soccer player and your knee hurts after every single practice and you ice it 3 times a night for 20 minutes and your knee keeps hurting, well, first of all, we're not addressing the problem because your pain's not getting better. Second of all, if you're having pain after soccer, like that's a red flag. You need to get that checked out. You need to change something in your overall, whether you're not strength training enough, whether you're over not managing your stress enough, whether you need to go see a PT. So if you're having this reoccurring issue where you always need to ice, there's something larger at play that needs to be addressed. Um, and the other thing too is again going back to like the risk reward. Are we talking about like a 12-year-old like club soccer player, or are we talking about like Megan Rapinoe at the World Cup? Like if you're at
Mhm,
the World Cup, do whatever you need to do to play the next day. Like I don't care as long as it's like safe and legal. Like do it. Or
mhm.
like if you're 12-year-old playing club soccer and you are taking ibuprofen and ice after every game, there's something larger going on that needs to be addressed. So for almost all athletes, I don't recommend ice to help with soreness or with recovery. And I only selectively use it when I really think the risk reward's a little bit in our favor, but I try to get away from it as much as possible as soon as possible.
Yeah, it's just like slapping on a Band-Aid to a bleeding wound. It's not really
Exactly.
going to solve the problem, and you bring up such a good point. Who are we talking about here? And if
Hmm.
it's youth athletes, middle school, high school, and you're in a constant state of muscle soreness or knee pain, there's something larger at play here. Are you too weak to handle your year-round demands? Are you do you have Osgood-Schlatter and you need to seek out a PT? Do you need to do your strength training or have more protein for muscle recovery? I mean, the ice is only going to help so much. It's almost going to like numb the pain that you feel, and you might
Hmm.
feel a little bit better. But young athletes should not be in a constant state of soreness.
Hmm. Exactly.
Like
Right. Yes.
that's a huge problem, and there's so many things that contribute to this. I mean, the year-round model, the lack of just overall physical literacy and movement and strength
Hmm.
in kids now. Like growing up as an athlete, I don't know about you, Tom, I didn't know what muscle soreness was until I was like in college, playing at a high level. But as a 12-year-old, you should not be that sore.
Right. And as a 12-year-old, so I grew up with three brothers, and then we had neighbors, and then we had cousins our age. And you kind of selectively remember stuff. But like when you're 12, like you're like playing recess at school, and then you come home at night, you play in the yard, and then you're running around the house, and it's just like this endless bout of energy. And now at 30, it's like, man, I kind of wish I felt that way all the time too. And then you kind of self audit yourself, like, oh, maybe like I'm not moving around as much, I'm not going outside as much, I'm not being as active, I'm taking on too much stress. And you try to get yourself back to like that 12-year-old, like, hey, if I want to feel better, it's because I was doing all these things and I didn't let all these things get in the way of it. But yeah, no, I don't, growing up as a kid, like I don't ever remember being like sore or like stressed out or burned out or like overworked. Like it was like, can we play more? Can we have more basketball games? Can we like do more fun things? Can we have more recess time? And I think a lot of adults can take a little piece of that and apply it to their lives too.
Mhm. You mentioned strength training a little bit, and I get asked this question a lot. So, with muscle, quote unquote, tightness, is it tightness? And we're talking about young athletes. Is it tightness or is it they're weak?
Yes. So I don't like car analogies, but they do really work well because people understand cars and there's some carryover to like humans. But humans are not cars, so it's never one to one. But if your car is making a noise and you just like call the mechanic and hey, it's making this noise, the mechanic's not going to know what it is unless they assess the car and kind of figure out what's broken, what's wrong, what's not working. So if you're having tightness, you can't just ask someone like, "Hey, like I feel tight. What should I do?" It's like, well, we need to do an assessment. Are you after surgery and you have this true like muscle limitation that needs to be stretched? That's like a small portion of the people. Are you someone who's not actually strength training or doing the best exercises and now working through 4 ranges of motion? And now your body is screaming, I am tight because my muscles are working so hard to support you because they don't have enough strength to keep things stable. That's probably a bigger portion of the population. So very often when people come in and like, oh, I'm so tight, like what stretches do I need to do? It's like, let's look at your range of motion. It's usually pretty good. Let's look at your movement patterns. Those usually need a little work. And then let's audit your schedule in terms of activities, strength training, sports. Those usually need a little touch up as well. So that common feeling of tightness, it could be several different things, but very often it's the muscle is screaming at you, I need more strength to keep things stable to get me feeling less tight and to feel stronger and more robust.
Mhm. It's so funny because as soon as an athlete feels tightness, they're like looking for this magic stretch that's going to just
Yeah.
solve their pain in like a day. And it's
Yeah.
like, wait a minute, we just need to get you on a well rounded strength program here.
Yeah.
And I get asked this all the time when people start their strength programs. They're like, oh, well, like, my hips are tight, my hamstrings are tight. And I'm just like, okay, well, it's in the program. Like, we're doing like our squats and our lateral lunges to help you with that. And then our sprint training to help you with your hamstrings and range of motion. And it's just funny because it's like it's not the magic stretch. It's just doing a good program consistently year round and you're going to see the results. Don't expect muscle soreness to be solved in 10 hours, right?
hmm My other favorite is when like a gymnast comes in, they're like, yeah, like my hamstring's so tight. And I'm like, okay, like lift your leg overhead. And their foot literally goes over their head. And I'm like, do you like need more range of motion to do your sport? And they're like, no, like I can do everything I need to. It's like, okay, so why are we having this tightness? And then usually it clicks a little bit like, oh, like I can like reach as far as I want. And the people who, and this is another, I guess like reoccurring issue with like health, fitness, sports performance is the things that we're good at, we want to just get better at. So if someone like likes to lift weights, they come in like, yeah, I need to get stronger. I need to get stronger. It's like you bench 400 pounds. Like how much more do you need to bench? Right. Or the very mobile athletes, like, yeah, like I need to like get more mobility. It's like you can already do the splits like 3 different ways. I think we're okay in the mobility bucket. What other buckets can we fill? And that's where it just comes down to like working with the right coach because the right coach can figure out which buckets need to be filled, how much they need to be filled. And when a bucket's overflowing, how do we change the program to prevent injury and burnout?
Mhm. What do you think it is with the hamstrings? Because I get a lot of athletes who say that their hamstrings are quote unquote tight. Why do they feel that? It's usually a weakness problem when I assess them, but I just don't get why they assume that's what the problem is with the hamstrings.
Right. So I think the intersection between like the hamstrings and the glutes, they are both trying to propel the body forward whether we're walking or running or playing sport. And for a variety of reasons, we don't always have the best ability to use our glutes the way we want to. They're the biggest muscle in the body, they provide a lot of force and power. So when the hamstrings kind of have to take over, that causes a lot of stress on the hamstrings, which just aren't the same. They don't have the same ability as the glutes to propel your body forward in space. Now, when I was younger, I'd be like, oh, yeah, like we're all sitting too much. Like that's our problem. Or like our glutes are inactive. And we know like that's not the whole picture there and a little bit of inaccuracy, but there are multiple factors that play. Um, and a lot of it is when you are extending your hip, when you're, think about like when you're running and you're pushing your body forward and your legs behind you, pushing you forward, where are you getting most of that power from? Is it from your glutes, which that's their role, that's what we want, or are your hamstrings and calves just getting asked to do too much? Their buckets getting filled too much, and now you have a tight hamstring. Now you have a sore calf, and this tightness and soreness isn't going away when you stretch, stretch, stretch. It's like okay, we know what the problem is. The first solution didn't work, well, let's look at some other solutions and see if that can help.
That paints a really good picture of what's going on and how you just need to focus on strengthening multiple muscle groups and not necessarily the muscle where the problem's coming from. It could be the
Exactly.
muscles that support. So I really like that. Now let's shift gears into knee pain in young female athletes. I get messages weekly on Twitter, parents saying that their young girl has Osgood-Schlatter and she's been dealing with it for several months and they're just devastated and they don't know what to do. And I'll ask them and I'll be like, well, she's still playing. And they're like, yeah, 3 to 4 times a week. And then like 2 games on the weekend. And then I'll ask, okay, well, what's causing the pain? And they're like, oh, after games is when it hurts the most. Okay, well, whatever's causing the pain, just stop doing that. So I just find it like so crazy that like people like see that their kids in pain and they just keep doing what's causing it. But I
hmm
think they don't know what like the full solution is to this. So can you just go into some of the stuff you do with your athletes who have Osgood-Schlatter?
Yes. So first of all, if you're a parent listening to this and your kid is having, let's just call it pain in front of the knee, make sure you do go to either a doctor or a therapist or a coach who has a really good understanding of diagnosing this issue, and making sure what we're dealing with is what we're actually dealing with. Because I think some people are like, oh, like you just have growing pains, or oh, like your friend has Osgood-Schlatters, like it must be that. Um,
Mm.
but also, I think a lot of people focus so much on like what the problem is, and they're not focused on like what the solution is. Because whether you're having Osgood-Schlatters, whether you're having jumper's knee, whether you have patellar tendonitis, quadriceps tendonitis, whether you're just having vague pain in the front of the knee, a lot of it's going to have the same solution. So I think so much of us want to know, oh, like my knee is special. What's wrong with it? Let's figure it out. Let's get all this imaging done. Let's just really figure it out. It's like, okay, let's just have like a good sense of what's going on, what's causing the issue, and then let's really focus on the solutions. And in rehab, that's all I do. I just focus on the solutions. As long as there's nothing like serious that needs surgery or like immediate medical care, like I care a little bit less about what's going on. I care more about what can I do to help you feel better. So when we're having pain like this, especially in like those teenage years where you're growing and different parts of your body are growing at different rates, you're not used to having longer limbs. You're not used to having kind of, middle school is like one of the stressful periods of life. You're not used to handling all this. It's really easy to have some pain. And there's kind of two things we can do. We can decrease activity, especially the one that's causing it, or we can make your system more robust so you can handle this increased stress. Now, most people they don't want to decrease activity, not even by like 10%. Like, hey, maybe like one game like every 2 weeks, like we just kind of pull back on for now. They're like, no, like we're not doing that. It's like, okay, that like if you don't want to budge in that category, we have to get you moving a lot better, feeling a lot stronger, getting in the weight room. Like we have to increase your strength because your knee can't take on the stress of your sport right now. And if we're not going to take away the stress, we have to make it more robust to handle the stress you're asking of it. So the people that I think that do best are the ones who can modify their activity a little bit. Maybe they cut down a little bit in practice, or a little bit in their games, or if they're on 3 club teams, they go down to 1 or 2. And then they also start, okay, let's look at how we're eating, let's look at our strength training, let's look at our sleep, let's look at our stress, because all of those things are going to matter. And in rehab, I really have full control over that strength training piece. I can educate them on the sleep and the nutrition and the stress and the mindset, but at some point they kind of have to take over that. And if they want more details, they got to work with someone in that specialty. But in terms of strength training, often we have to get those basic movement patterns uh, more resilient. So whether we're talking about squats or lunges or deadlifts, calf raises, all those things, we have to get the athlete stronger in those positions because those positions in the game setting are causing some issues in the athlete's knee. So those are the things that we work and focus on, and we talk through kind of everything else that I listed out. And usually, the athlete gets better in those situations when they do everything that I ask of them.
That would be great, wouldn't it?
Oh my gosh, yes, and sometimes, what, like, sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes, like, "Hey, I think this is gonna help," and it's like, it's not, and that's how you get better as a therapist and coach. Like, you make mistakes, you screw up, like, no one's perfect, um, but when you see, 20 athletes in a month and they all have the same issue and they all get better the same way, you just kinda wanna, like, the next one that comes in, it's like, look at all these. They all did this. They all modified their activity. They all got stronger in the weight room. They all worked on their mobility, their stress, their nutrition, all that, and they got better. So this system works. You just gotta figure out a way to get them to buy into it.
Mhm. Can you go into what exactly is happening when an athlete has Osgood-Schlatter and why playing their game will aggravate it more?
Yes, absolutely. So a lot of people when they have like Osgood-Schlatters, they're like, "Oh, um, I just need to get that like little knee brace thing and put that on, or that knee strap thing and put it on. I'll be fine." And when I was in like middle school, early high school, I had some like high school basketball players that were role models to me, and they had ankle braces, and I assume they had ankle issues or whatever. But I thought that, like, oh, like they're cool, like they wear ankle braces. Like I want to be cool and like wear an ankle brace. And it's funny when you're younger, you're just like, no, like you don't want to just wear stuff to wear stuff. Like you want to wear it because it has a purpose, right? But with Osgood-Schlatters, you're having trouble with the tendon in the front of the knee, and there's too much stress going to that tendon. And that can be from a variety. Obviously, it can come from sport with repetitive running, repetitive jumping, repetitive change of direction. If you're playing 3 to 4 games a week, at some point, a 12-year-old's just not built for that. It might be in their brain, they might be, oh, this is what I want to do. I want to play soccer every day, but like their body's not keeping up to it. And when you're growing, you're adding more, you're just adding more mass to your body. You're getting bigger, you're getting taller. So you don't always know where your knee is in space. And we call that proprioception. So there can be, and that's when you see like a 13-year-old who just sprouts up and they kind of look like they've never run before. It's like, well, they're still trying to figure out like their legs are 3 inches longer. So there's a little bit of proprioceptive work, but that the patellar tendon in front of the knee is getting irritated from basically too much stress than it can handle. And again, going back to what I kind of mentioned earlier, there's 2 ways we can deal with this. We can decrease the amount of stress on it, and usually that's physical stress, but also we know emotional stress can play into it, psychological stress, things like that. And also, we can make the tendon and the muscles around that stronger. So your quadriceps, your hamstrings, your glutes, your adductors, calves, we can make all those stronger to take some stress away from the tendon so it doesn't hurt your athlete as much after a game, after practice. And we do that long enough, we usually see really good results.
I can definitely agree, and people who really do the best with coming back from Osgood-Schlatter are the people who take their strength training seriously, a couple times a week and then maybe
Mhm.
cutting back on a game or maybe a practice. And look, you have to inform your coach that your knee is in pain. Too often, I have girls and parents who are afraid to speak up and they think they're going to fall behind. But your career, the length of that is worth so much more than this blip in time where you need to take maybe 4 or 6 weeks off to just get better. It's like a very small part of your career that's going to be worth taking that time in the long run. So I can't reiterate that enough. Now, as far as the strength training, Tom, so you mentioned squats, deadlifts. What about isometrics good for athletes with Osgood-Schlatter or any like very specific exercises that you do?
Yes. So I absolutely love isometrics for this population. And for those of you that are listening and don't know what isometrics are, your muscles are working, but your joints aren't moving. Think about if you're doing like a plank, you're working hard, but you're not going anywhere. And these isometrics, the research has found, is really good for tendon pain, but also kind of that initial strength training period. Of improving strength or giving your body the capacity to build strength. So when you have that pain in the front of the knee, like Osgood-Schlatter's, I often try to find a squat or lunge position that is tolerable to the athlete so they don't have any increase in pain. And then we work on holding that position for anywhere from 30 to 40 seconds. We'll do 3 to 4 rounds of that. And the beauty of it, it's really challenging. And if you don't think it is, you're not pushing yourself hard enough in terms of squat depth or lunge depth. Um, but also you don't get a lot of soreness the next day from isometrics typically. So when you're having this knee pain, you can do isometrics every day. And some I've seen some coaches do it twice a day. And I really want to experiment with that. It's just hard to find the right person who has the time and energy to, but you can do them very often. They're very helpful and you don't get that residual soreness. And a lot of athletes are concerned when I start strength training, I'm gonna be sore from my game. It's gonna affect my shot, it's gonna affect my speed, and when you add in some isometrics, you don't get that soreness, and people buy in really well then as well. So yes, absolutely love isometrics for Osgood-Schlatters or for anyone who's having pain in front of their knee with their sport.
Mhm. Now, I get this question a lot, but do you have any stretches for the knee?
That is good. So it's funny when and like I probably do this too. When I'm asking someone about my going back to the car thing, when I talk about my car or I talk about like art or like music or whatever, and I ask someone a question, they're like, this guy doesn't know anything.
Right.
Um, but no, like the knee is a joint. And if you're going to stretch something, you're usually trying to stretch like the muscle or the tissue around the joint. So you're not going to actually stretch the knee. Like you don't want to like stretch the knee joint. I guess that would just like pop off your leg. Like, you don't want
That
that.
wouldn't be possible.
But when you're saying your knee, the person's usually referring to, okay, like I feel tightness in the front of my knee, or I feel it in like back and like in my hamstrings, or I feel it in like my upper calf. So again, getting a better question will get you a better answer to what do you want to stretch. And then the deeper why is why are you stretching this? And if you are stretching it, is it helping? So kind of goes back to what we talked about in stretching. Why are we doing this? Is it helping? Is there something better we can be doing? And again, I'm such an advocate for working with someone with these problems because the person you work with, uh, they've seen this a million times and they know like the better solutions for it. You can Google stuff all you want, but you're just going to be stressing yourself out because WebMD can lead you down some weird rabbit holes and Google and social media even. It can be really good if you find the right person, but working with someone just takes away like all the problem solving for you and you can just focus on getting the solutions and the answers to your problems.
That's so funny because I've been on WebMD whenever I'm sick, and you can just go down like a dark hole, and you're like trying to diagnose yourself, and it just stresses you out, and you just need to go see someone at that point.
Right.
But it's so true with like the knee stretch question. I think like for us as professionals, we're just like, no, like the knee's a joint, obviously, but we forget that we need to educate everyone and be like, hey, you need to just work on relieving the muscles that surround that joint, and that's probably why you have tightness on the kneecap. So, what stretches, or do you recommend stretches for like quad or calf, even with these issues? Foam rolling.
Yeah. So again, stretching, I kind of put in the category of foam rolling once in my career. I'm like, static stretching is a waste of time. Why would I even do it? Not beneficial. And again, following some mentors in the field kind of led me to step back a little bit. Okay, why do I not like stretching, and what stretching specifically don't I like? And there's this research article, everyone that quotes like, oh, stretching decreases power, and you don't want to do that right before like a sporting event or a workout because you're gonna have less power. And if you look at the actual article, the one of the groups in the study, they did like 20 minutes of stretching. And it's like that is much different than a 30-second calf stretch or a 20-second shoulder stretch. So I think the type of stretching, how often you're doing it, why you're doing it, um, and also, I'm really big into people who are responders or not. So for me, I'm a big responder to like light and warmth. So when I go outside, it's sunny out, it's warm out, I just feel a million times better. And some people feel like a little better, but I feel a ton better. So if you're someone who's a good responder to stretching, you do a little bit at the beginning or the end of the workout. Obviously, we know at the beginning of the workout, we want to do more like dynamic warm up, dynamic stretches to get us prepped for the activity we're going to do. But a little bit of stack stretching every now and then is probably gonna have more benefit than harm, as long as you're doing it the right way and for the right reasons.
Can you describe one of your favorite stretches for Osgood-Schlatter?
Yeah, so for Osgood-Schlatters, a lot of people, they just have a lot of tension, like, in their, like, hamstring or their calf because they're working so hard to support the knee because the quad isn't strong enough, and I know that's kinda connecting a lot of dots there, but they get all this tension and they just can't relieve it. So sometimes I'll just do a simple, like, calf stretch up against the wall, like, holding a calf stretch for 30 seconds, your foot's behind you, and is it changing the muscle tissue? Probably not. Is it going to change the actual tendon? Probably not. But it gets the patient to calm down a little bit, gets the muscles around the area to calm down a little bit. So when we are going into that strengthening and movement pattern series, they have better results with it. They feel a little bit better. They move a little bit better. They buy in a little bit more. And it usually helps with that. So often with Osgood-Schlatters, it's more of a we need to get you stronger. But if we can find a couple stretches to make you feel better and allow us to do the strengthening, that is kind of like our gateway to the solution.
Awesome. That's yeah, that's always a good one to do. And I do want to touch a little bit on nutrition. So what role does nutrition play in recovery and pain management?
Yeah. So as every coach and every athlete eventually figures out, nutrition is a huge part of success in athletics. The hard part is nutrition is very complicated. It can be very complicated. It can be very individualized. And that's where some issues come up with recommendations of what to eat, of what not to eat, of when to eat, things like that. And the thing I thought of the other day is, and I've seen like messages on this before, like if you're going to give nutrition advice, all of us know like eat like more vegetables, eat real food, like eat enough food, things like that. We know those things, right? But if you are going to give a lot of nutrition advice, you do have to know some of the like side effects of people or like the negative consequences. So for example, if you're working with someone and be like, yeah, like you should have like a yogurt every morning with your breakfast, but you don't know that they're allergic to lactose or to milk, like you could actually do more harm than good. And I think so many of us want to like provide the good, but we have to have an understanding of the harm as well. So with nutrition, when I'm talking, when patients or clients ask about, I do feel confident in giving general advice. Like these are things to look at. These are kind of like the big picture things. but I try to give as much nutrition advice as I would want a nutritionist giving fitness advice. So those big pictures, I love giving, talking about, it's better than not. But at some point, if they want to get really like into the weeds or individualized, or if they have a condition that needs special attention, I do try to refer to a nutritionist or a dietitian that has some experience with that because I know they can get even better advice from them.
I think that's such a great point. Just seeing a specialist when you have to, depending on
Mhm.
what you're trying to achieve. And for everyone listening, if you need more specifics on nutrition, especially for female athletes, recovery, eating around the menstrual cycle, definitely check out Female Athlete Nutrition with Lindsay Cortez. That's one of my favorite episodes. So, yeah, Tom, thank you for just repeating the importance of seeking out someone who is an expert in this space. And I think this conversation on recovery and pain management has been amazing. And I hope people listen to your advice because I have so many followers who are going through Osgood-Schlatter right now. And I really hope that they take action so that we do not run into bigger problems down the road. Is there anything else you want to end on or just reiterate the importance of?
I do think when an athlete is hurt, they see it as like this purely negative thing. And when you talk to any strength conditioning coach, physical therapist, even like some sport coaches, the moment they look back and saw their kind of like career life or athletic career change is when they had these huge periods of adversity or doubt or an injury, and that forces you to take time to audit yourself. How's my nutrition? How's my mindset? How's my stress? How's my strength training? How's my skill work? And those times are necessary to kind of take that next step. So if you're an athlete listening to this and you're just bummed out because your knee hurts or you just had surgery, or if you're a parent and you're just really concerned that your kid is just going to miss too much time, these are some of the kind of like the turning points in a lot of people's lives and careers when they have this huge adversity. So if you're struggling with knee pain, if you're struggling with sleeping, if you're struggling like you're on JV and you want to make varsity, these are the times that are really going to help shape both your athletic career and maybe even your personal career as well. So embrace it as much as you can. Um, Follow people like Erica, like read her book, or read her blogs, like follow her on Twitter. That is how you get better is by investing in yourself in those ways. So that would be my kind of final send off here is if you're struggling, like it might actually be a really good thing for you in the long run.
That's such a good way to wrap things up. I'm not even going to add anything to that because it was so good and so profound. So, Tom, where can everyone find you?
Yes, so I'm most active on Twitter and Instagram. Both handles are at Tom Broback. I do have a podcast as well, which Erica's been a guest on. She's been very grateful with her time. So you can check out the podcast, the Tom Broback podcast. Search that in whatever app that you listen to podcasts on. But social media is the way to go. If you use it the right way, you can learn a ton from it. And so yeah, Twitter and Instagram is the way to go.
And do you have a website in case people want to work with you remotely?
Yeah, so I run everything through basically Twitter right now. So if you have questions and you want to reach out to me, just send me a DM. I'll answer it pretty quickly and we can figure out if we're a good match to work together. Or if you just have questions, I love answering questions. I love when people really care about their bodies and their careers. So if you have a PT question, if you have a rehab or a working out question, like just DM me and I can get back to you. It's the beauty of social media is we can connect to anyone all across the world, and that's how we met is through social media. So I think it's really cool when people do that. So yeah, no website for me, but just shoot me a DM and we'll help you and I'll help you out as best I can.
I love it. You're keeping it nice and simple. So, guys, be sure to check out Tom's links in the caption below. Tom, thank you again. This was super valuable information. I learned a few new things as well. So, guys, we hope you enjoyed the show. See you next time.